So there was some news this week with ESPN. Shout out to Vinnie Goodwill on NBA Today. He had talked about Cade Cunningham and how he was heavily in the recruitment phase, and some names that were linked to the Pistons: Austin Reeves, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie Irving. Wanted to ask you guys, what did you think about the initial report, and were there any names that kind of piqued your interest?
To me, the thing that immediately stands out is when players do this type of recruitment, it stems in part from a self-assuredness that they can be the best player on a championship team. And I think Cade, recognizing the development and where, things ended even last year and the high level play that we saw, even with the collapsed lung and the broken ribs, like to what extent that was, we still aren't even fully aware. But to still, for a lot of the playoffs be, other than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, like the best player in the postseason at points. I know Brunson had the awesome finals and things like that, but like if we're being real, it was probably like SGA and then Cade as far as like the best, playmaking and scoring guards we saw this postseason. And so I think, in part, I think this is him just like saying, hey, I'm ready to stake my claim on the league. I think I can be, the best player on that type of team. And I also think, like, even though fans would look at, the fact that they didn't land any of those players that they quote unquote struck out, but the reality of it is, like with Austin Reeves, he was always going to be going back to the Lakers more than likely. That was where I think he was going to be able to get the most money, but also, that's just, that was his team. I think it's very hard to get someone out of the Lakers once they're integrated into that camp. I think some of it's definitely held back by the contract situation that is Jalen Duren, and I think that certainly complicates a lot of the recruiting efforts that are there too. But also, it's like a lot of these, like a lot of these names, like Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, like these are guys that can still, kind of just be, flames that you keep going. Like I think those are guys where, their availability certainly isn't, just like, finite and or isn't, just like closed for the season. Like they can come back at a later date and, capitalize when the moment is right. So I think, I know for fans, it's like you always just keep saying, oh, well, they can always, it's like, oh, well, they can always strike on later. But the reality of it is, it's like you'd rather a team take the cautious approach than, like blow all of your picks, all of your, prospects, to go out and get a player that just isn't the right fit, because then that's going to truly close your window. And then you're going to have to start having some conversations that you really don't want to have.
Yeah, I like this a lot for the Pistons. Again, this was, to me, as I said a lot this offseason and then prior to, I think this is going to be the biggest offseason for Trajan's, tenure as a Pistons exec. And then using Cade Cunningham as a part of that process, I think is going to would have been a huge, or was, because it happened. It was a huge tool to show kind of where they are and where he is in his maturation. Obviously on the court, he's, a top 5, top 10 player at worst in the NBA, an MVP candidate. And a lot of these guys that we've seen through Cade's, time in the NBA, even prior to that, have shown a lot of respect and admiration of Cade's development and maturation on as a player and off the floor as well. What really struck me and kind of intrigued me was the Kevin Durant connection. Not just because we know the history that they have. We know they go back, from, Cade's days in college and then prior to that as well. But looking at what Kevin Durant's last several years have been in the NBA, where he's hopping from team to team to team to team, and a big, question mark has been his maturity, his leadership, and how that impacts, the path of where these teams are going. Teams like Houston, teams like the Nets, teams like Phoenix, like those are teams that to me didn't have the strongest leadership. Even when you're looking at a player like Kevin Durant, that's never really been a strong suit of his game. And knowing that Cade Cunningham, to me, when he's here, everyone has acknowledged that he is the de facto leader and number one voice of this franchise. And to me, if Kevin Durant were to strike and be that, choice of the player to kind of move over for the Pistons, I think it would work for the best out of all the teams that Kevin Durant has been on, because of the exact thing I was just talking about. There wasn't really a whole lot of great leadership with the Nets when he was there. It wasn't a whole lot of great leadership with the Suns when he was there. Even with Houston now. I like the talent that they have, but leadership, I think, is maybe the biggest question mark for them. Knowing that everybody respects and tunes into what Cade Cunningham has to say in that locker room, I think would have been the most suitable place for a player like Kevin Durant to be in, because knowing the respect that he has for Cade and knowing where Cade is in his career at this point, I think it would have been the best place for him to kind of listen and lock in and stay as focused as possible to keep that, camaraderie together. Because that's something huge that the Pistons press on outside of just talent and on-court production as well. So I liked seeing and hearing that. I like Cade being that active piece. Again, even though they didn't land any of those pieces, I respect the effort in using all resources available to try to make those pitches. And Cade Cunningham, again, being the player that he is at this point, he's going to be the biggest recruiting piece that you have in tool to persuade these kind of players, because he's going to be here for the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully. And, you're going to want to have him on par with everything that they're trying to do moving forward.
I will say the KD rumors to me are the loudest. Like every other day I log on, it's just like Pistons want to be the front of the line if things just don't work in Houston. So there's also
Kevin Durant has kind of seemingly made it known that he would love to play with Cade if the opportunity presented itself.
That, and they're both Nike guys too, which it kind of does help. I wasn't going to bring up the picture, but I mean, we can
don't do it. No. God, sexy red and Drake. I cannot. No, y'all. That is the worst. Oh my God.
Okay, we won't mention him. He was standing next to Kevin Durant. Devin Booker was there as well. Obviously, it was in some sort of
they just all like owls and were wearing a sweatshirt that showed their appreciation of owls. That's it.
I know. I think Basketball Reference has to change his nickname to OVO Cade.
Oh no.
That was a big dividing piece. I tweeted that, and everyone half was like, "Oh my God, Cade is the man! Oh, he's with Drake." And then the rest is like, "Oh, Cade's cursed. The Pistons are done this season." And y'all know where I was at on that. Just anything that relates to sports and Drake, you're basically screwed for your year. So, Cade, get away from that man, please.
It's Eric at the end of the season. Trajan, how do you get rid of the Drake curse? Is Kendrick Lamar going to become on the payroll?
I'm making that pitch. I'm writing an article about it tomorrow. Get ready.
But to kind of circle back to the KD thing, they obviously have spent some time together. I know even before he got drafted, that's been a really big mentor to Cade Cunningham as well. And we talk about secondary creator. A lot of us in the Pistons space, that is something they still don't currently have. And even KD at the age that he is, it's still a 20-point per game bucket getter that you could pair next to Cade Cunningham. Now, it depends. What does Houston want to do? How does Houston look this year? Apparently, they're in the Russell Westbrook sweepstakes.
Yeah,
I don't know how they're going to fare in the Western Conference.
Marcus Smart and Russell Westbrook on the court together in 2026 is just that sets offense back 40 years.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, man.